The Washington Post has an incredible series out this morning, the first of 3 parts on the ever-increasing size of the government's intelligence community. It raises the question, can the community designed to protect us simply be too big to be effective? We are joined now by one of the writers on this series, a 2-year investigation, one of Washington's finest journalists, Dana Priest from the Washington Post. Dana, of course, has done incredible work in the past, Pulitzer Prize-winning writer with the Walter Reed. I think you went up for that, right? Uncovering that. Again, another astonishing report, 2 full pages inside the Washington Post. I guess I'm just going to ask you, what prompted this investigation that you spent 2 years on, and how would you kind of summarize like the most shocking thing that people are going to feel when they pick it up and read it?
Well, first, thanks for having me on. Really what it was is the partner in this, Bill Arkin, and he covers military for so many years, and I've covered the military and the intelligence community, and both of us had this feeling that something big had grown up, and it was still so difficult to get our arms around, and yet it was so important to do that. So how could we do it as reporters who don't have clearances, obviously, and don't want to compromise national security? How can you describe this? What we came up with was what we call a sort of our own genome project, to actually physically map it. And if you go on the website, you can see the map, which shows you all the locations of government agencies and corporate entities that do top secret work. But we came up with those through, Bill is an amazing researcher, knows how to use the web like nobody I know, and to use public documents. And then we did a lot of just grunt work, gumshoe reporting on the ground to figure out what's out there.
Well, you say that many security and intelligence agencies are just doing the same work. There's all this redundancy. 51 federal organizations operating in 15 U.S. cities, just tracking what the flow of money. What was the most, kind of outrageous, and some of it I actually think kind of tragic, like the Fort Hood example, and how that just really fell through the cracks.
Well,
what was,
after we figured out the size of it, then we had to figure out, well, what are the patterns in it, and the trends that are disturbing, and the one that we came up to that you just referred to was the overlap of agencies doing the same thing. And
not knowing, and not really knowing
that was the disturbing part, is that once we got the number that are doing this and the number that are doing that, we started talking to people within this one, and it turned out that they didn't themselves know everybody else who was working on this subject. So when you talk about what are the most shocking features, it's not the numbers, it's not the size, it's not even the money, it's that the people inside who want to do a good job have been overwhelmed by the size and growth of this, to the extent that they themselves don't know how big it's become, and express frustration about that. In fact, tomorrow, when our story comes out about contractors, I have this amazing quote from Secretary Robert Gates on the record, giving me what he says is a terrible confession, which I'm not going to spill here, but is about that, about how much information they don't have to start evaluating this system. And with the deficits and recession, they know they're going to have to start cutting back, or at least not spending as much. The increases won't be as high, and so you have to make wise choices about where to cut.
Well, you had so many people on the record in the piece today. So many of the top senior officials in the defense establishment, and I thought the quote from James Clapper, obviously nominated to be the head of DNI, Director of National Intelligence, was he, getting to your point about redundancy and just not knowing, he says there's only one entity in the entire universe that has visibility on all special access programs. And now, of course, the series is called Top Secret America. There's only one entity, Clapper says, and that's God.
Right.
That's astonishing.
It is, and he's not the only one that felt that way. He was willing to say it because he's been around for a long time. I think he recognizes the problems, probably wants to try to fix them. I think that's, maybe what he's going to tell Congress tomorrow. But that's the other, was kind of shocking to me in a way, that we didn't get much pushback from people. We got more of a welcome, let us know what you find type of attitude, including last week when we interviewed Secretary Gates, who'd been briefed on our findings, and he was very interested in what we had to say, and said that he was going to start a review of his programs to see what doesn't need to be there and how they can better coordinate.
And this lack of coordination, you trace the Fort Hood example. But there are consequences. I mean, there are real consequences to this. I mean, how would you characterize that?
Well, it is not just a question of money and bodies. It's a question of how effective is the system. And the system becomes too big and the lines of responsibility blur. And that's what happened in the Fort Hood case, where you had just 25 miles up from Walter Reed Medical Center, where this alleged shooter was a psychiatrist. You had the largest Army counterintelligence unit, whose main purpose is to look inside the Army and say, do we have potential threats within the Army? And instead of doing that, they started on a mission to look outside the in the United States, but outside the Army, and just to describe the potential Al-Qaeda and other terrorist group affiliations. That's something that the FBI and Homeland Security has been doing for years. Why did they need to reinvent the wheel? Because they could. And in some ways, because it's easier.
Mm-hmm. And also you talk, I think one of the other kind of depressing things in your piece is that it's almost like there's office politics. You know, it's like if you've got a window office, then I want a window office. If you've got a security detail, I want one. If you've got a big SCIF, the secret compartment where they review classified information, then mine's going to be bigger. I mean, this is, you know, but this isn't, you know, an ad agency. And these are Americans, you know, our security at stake.
Right, and I find that even though that's the case, the human ego plays into this to an extent that it is shocking. Turf battles and resistance to share what you have and resistance to pare down what you have because it's not really necessary runs counter to people who want to build their empires, who want to have bigger organizations and more control over things. And especially, I mean, I had three-star generals sort of chuckling about, you know, everyone I know has a security detail, and if you don't, you're not really a man. And that does play into, it's a very poignant point that he's making that goes beyond just ego. It goes into effectiveness of government.
And who's the loser?
Well, we all are, because we all want us to be safer. We're paying the money to make the government safer. And it's something that's become so big, you just don't know if you're safer.
All right. Well, Dana, thanks very much for joining us. We'll look forward to tomorrow's installment and then again on Wednesday. And of course, whatever Secretary Gates told you, I'll be looking for that first of all. But again, it's terrific work and congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.